Test, test. Can everybody hear me? Thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to get started. So basically, I thank you for coming today. Pure Storage, we're going to talk about the three core pillars of cyber resilience: prepare, protect, and recover. I'm actually going to use a real example of a client that got hit with ransomware. And the reason I'm going to use that in the second half of the presentation, because the issues they ran into really match what a lot of the clients we're seeing run into. From a standpoint of prepare, what I'm going to do, I'm going to spend the first 5 minutes talking about, identifying, the cyber threats, the gaps and vulnerabilities. Basically, the face of the cyber criminals changing quite a bit. How they get into the environment and what they do once they're inside has changed significantly. The second part I'm going to do is how do we be vigilant against that? How do we detect these threats the moment they come in? Because again, the key to ransomware attack, a malware attack, is you want to be able to identify it quickly and respond quickly. That's the key aspect. So how do we identify as soon as it gets in there? And then lastly, how do we respond? But how do we optimize every single minute of the recovery process? The client I'm going to talk about, basically, they're about 18, I think they're maybe 19 months into their cyber recovery now. They've recovered 70% of their environment because, again, they weren't optimized to be able to recover quickly. So the second half of the presentation is really going to talk about how do you optimize and get the full benefit and get back, because the goal is business continuance. If I get hit with a cyber attack, which is probably the biggest threat any company is going to face, how do I get back into business continuance as quick as possible? So we'll talk about first is that part of the problem with ransomware is that the attacker only has to find one single vulnerability, where you guys got to be perfect. And that's a bit of the problem, because 85% of the attacks that happened in 2025 were AI powered, which means this is a technology now, which all it does originally is look for vulnerabilities in their environment. They only have to find one. Once they penetrate, they're actually got quite smart in how they do things now. They can land, they can establish their patient zero type of idea and start setting up their staging areas. And they do that with the AI as they're bypassing a lot of the endpoint detection tools that are out there. Also, when they land in there, they're bypassing a lot of the system files, the critical system files, because what they don't want to do is they don't want to create any instability. They want to be able to get in, they want to be able to take a look around and do stuff, but also what they're bringing now with them is a very, very small package, which is a password stealer, tokens, whatever it may be, because again, that was kind of the largest thing in a ransomware attack was try and get a password to be able to escalate into domain admin. If you get domain admin, then you have access to all the jewels, basically, all the applications, all the backup environment. Now they're doing that very, very quickly type of environment. And the reason they're starting to see success is the face of the hacker is changing. Again, everybody thinks of the original hacker, somebody like myself, an IT geek with a hoodie on in their garage, and that's how it originally started out, kind of a shotgun approach, just kind of hit as many organizations as you can. If you get in, that's great, you do it. A lot of people have put different technologies in to protect it, but now what we're finding is that these independent cyber criminals are now organizations, very, very well-funded organizations. A lot of them attack different governments type of idea, but they're very, very business-minded. So it's not just a shotgun approach. They're very strategic in what they go after and how they penetrate the environment. And what they do is they conduct deep research on organizations when they go in. What's the financial strength of the company? What's the size of the company pension? Are they ransomware insured? And those last two little bits are quite key, is will they pay the ransom? This is why hospitals are a very, very favorable target, because they recognize when they're down, it's actually patient health. Lives are at risk. Government environments, if they're brought down, again, they're more likely to pay the ransom because, again, they don't want disruption in service. And cyber resilience level is very key. They can take a look at vulnerabilities, and they can take a look and see how secure you are. And I'll give an example. If somebody comes into your home, if you have a home and you have, beware of the dog sign up and you have certain securities in place, you're not so much interested in catching the criminal. What you want them to do is you just want them to move on. You want them to go to the next place. You just don't want to break in. It's the same thing here. If you have some cyber resilience in place, a hacker's going to take a look at it because they don't want to get caught. They don't want to spend a lot of time in there. And you want them to move on to the next organization. So those are the key aspects we're taking a look at. And a lot of vulnerabilities that people have in place is they assume with their cyber security they have, that protects it. But again, you're as strong as your weakest link. And unfortunately, a lot of time, the weakest link is a human being type of idea, letting them come in. So what cyber resilience is, it's not waving a white flag. Cybersecurity is protecting the data to make sure it doesn't happen. But cyber resilience is, if the hacker does get in, how do I quickly identify it, and how do I quickly respond? And that's really what this is about then, is taking a look at the second piece, which is I'm going to talk briefly about our product. This is not really going to be a features and functions environment, but there's some differentiators in our product that's key. Is first of all, what is Pure Storage? We are a software-defined platform, which means we can run from cloud all the way to on-premise. But when it comes to on-premise, we build our own appliances. And it's interesting because there's a lot of different technologies. I'm going to talk about it. But we can support every single workload from your most intense database, your most intense AI workload, all the way through to being a backup target for your data protection into long-term archive. So we have all different aspects in doing it. And what's key about the data is that we secure the data the moment it's put in place. So as soon as you create something in production, we can protect it. End-to-end encryption, data and application immutability and indelibility. So a lot of people talk about immutability. Immutability is simply, I don't have the ability to encrypt my data. But so what a lot of them do now is they'll delete the data to do other type of damage to it. We also have indelibility, which means you can't change it at all, which means the moment you create data on our platform, all the way through backup, all the way through into archive, we'll ensure it's encrypted, we'll ensure it's immutable, and we'll ensure it's indelible. It's going to be basically tamper-proof from a hacker standpoint. Second one is that we are software-defined, which is unique, is that we can run across on-premise and on cloud. We can do it seamlessly. Basically, we have a product called Fusion, which allows you to basically view everything as one big data cloud where you can move data around very efficiently. But we also build our own product, and this is what I'm holding up here. This is a direct flash module and that. So this here, you can keep 150 terabytes worth of data on this. By the end of the year, you'll be able to keep 300 terabytes on this. It's the type of innovation we do. And we're in that linear path. We're having the same conversation 18 months from now. That'll be 600 terabytes on this. 3 or 4 years, we're talking about 1.2 petabytes on this drive, which means we reduce your power consumption by 90%, but also the space consumed by 90%. We can do that, and that's type of the innovation we have in place, is that because we develop our own product, we can build that type of technology. What's also unique about our product is that we have one operating system, whether you're on-premise or any of these any of these products you use, or any of these workloads, one operating system, and it's always on. And I want to talk about that concept for a second, is that we believe with all the amount of data that's out there, we don't want you to move the data. We want to keep the data in place and want you to upgrade around it, which means our product never goes off. I just came with a client, our first Epic client in the US. 11 years they've been on the same product. It's never been down, but yet the product is completely modern. Software upgrades are non-disruptive. We can replace controllers, so you have the latest controllers, replace chassis, add new capacity, and we're designed to never go down. So we're an always-on platform. So what's key is we keep the data in place and we upgrade the hardware around it. And that's key because I'm going to spend the second half of this thing talking about a cyber event where we actually have a built and isolated recovery environment, and it's about recovering your data and not restoring it, which is we allow you to recover your data right in place without having to move the data. And that really is the key to Pure Storage, is we have performance, security built in, and design that you keep your data in place, you upgrade the hardware around it, and if you get hit with a cyber attack, same type of thing. Don't move your data around, recover it in place. I'm going to talk quickly about some of the aspects of protecting, and protecting is visibility. So we have a lot of built-in tools which are fairly nice here. We have a data protection assessment. Data protection assessment, take a look at your entire environment. It comes back and determines how you're integrating with your backup products, because we integrate with all the backup products out there. Commvault, Veeam, Rubrik, Net Backup, Haiku, whatever you may have in place, we are that high-powered storage engine behind it when we tie into it. But also how you're using snapshots, how you're using immutability, how you're doing replication. We allow you to take a look across the entire environment, give yourself a score out of 5, and determine just from those honeycombs there, what's vulnerable, what's not. It's just visibility. How am I protecting my data? Also, everything I'm going to show you is completely included into our product. So when you buy our product, there's no add-ons and that. So it's not like if you do this feature, it's going to be that. Not just current, but even future releases. So if you buy a product today and we come up with a new feature a couple years from now, that's also included. So everything I'm showing you is all part of the product. There's no such thing as really an add-on in our product. Security assessment. Do I have any default passwords? Am I patching up to date? You know, do I have any empty open buckets? Again, from a security standpoint, what we're trying to do is we're trying to identify those gaps and vulnerabilities and plug them. We're trying to create it so if a hacker comes along, they're going to see, okay, this is a difficult environment to break into. Let's move on. That's the goal we want to be able to do, is we want to be able to identify the gaps, then plug the gaps. You can have a conversation with your environment now, no matter what you do. You can sit there and you can actually click the microphone and ask it anything you want, any type of security questions. I'm adding this application to the environment. What's the best way to lay it out? Do I have any, patching updates? Anything you want to be able to do, and you can have these deep conversations now. And then disaster recovery assessment, basically the ability to be able to take your data and move it off-site. VMware to be able to put it in a different environment if you get hit with a cyber attack. And then lastly, an enhanced anomaly detection. This is really key because we look at multiple different ways of how data enters in the environment. We collect all the metadata, goes into our data lake. We have a massive data lake that's completely AI powered, which allows us to be able to detect within your environment, is your data behaving any different in any way whatsoever? We're going to flag it and allow you to take a look at it. Does a couple things that's going to warn you early. That's that early notification. Hey, something's going on, you may want to take a look at it. Could be just normal routine stuff, but hey, let's take a look at it. But secondly, what's key is that we can identify right away when your data changed, because one of the biggest problems when you get hit with a cyber attack is what is the blast radius? What got hit and when it got hit? A couple of clients I'm going to talk about, this is not confidential, this is out in the public sphere. Nova Scotia Power, for example, the hacker was inside their environment for 5 weeks before they even recognized he was even there. And that's what's happening a lot of times. AI allows you to be able to move in the environment very, very stealthily. And in doing that, we can take a look, and as soon as any parts of your data starts changing, we can identify it. So right away, we can determine, if you get hit with a cyber attack, you can go back to all your different volumes and determine exactly what got hit and when it got hit. That's very, very key when we're talking about going through the cyber recovery process, which I'm going to spend the next few slides talking about, because it is a big differentiator with us. Before I do that, I'll talk about one last thing that's really key with us, is that there are some great security tools out there. We tie into every one of them. From a production environment, say, let's take CrowdStrike, for example, tie into the API. So if something happens right away, we're going to work with the CrowdStrike environment to be able to take a snapshot of what may be impacted and isolate that environment right away. Tie into the graphing capabilities of CrowdStrike. We have those tools for all these environments. So basically what it is that there's some great technologies out there. How do we utilize it best? And that we can do that by tying into our APIs. We can also store very, very large pools of data, and we can process it very quickly. This is a very high performance environment I'm going to show you. And one of the key aspects is that when you get hit with a cyber attack, you want to chew through as many logs as possible, as quickly as possible, and we enable you to do all that within our platform. So that's the protect aspect. But now I'm going to walk through the anomaly of a ransomware attack. Let me just do a quick time check here. Okay, got 19 minutes until lunchtime. So you have a production environment. Again, it's fairly consistent what you have out there. You're going to have your production storage out there. It could be block, it could be file, it could be a mix of different technologies. You have your host infrastructure. Quite often it's virtualized. Again, we support VMware, Hyper-V, Nutanix. We tie into pretty much any product out there. And on top of your production environment is where you're running your VMs, your databases, your unstructured data. Pretty standard stuff. This is within a data center. And adjacent to that is your backup and recovery. Now, we support everything. I have Commvault and Veeam here because they're here today, so I'm just going to show them some love and talk about the two products that's out there. So you have your Commvault and Veeam backup software, you have your infrastructure, and they store it on top of storage. And this is really the conversation I want to get into, because a lot of times people talk about it's just backup. I'll put it wherever it needs to be. That was great in a time frame where the key goal was fast backups to be able to deduplicate the data and keep it efficiently. But ransomware changes the story now, because the one thing that happens with ransomware is that you got to recover at scale. And so the backup product now has to be driven by speed of recovery. That is the most important thing, because the biggest threat to an organization is a cyber attack. Let's face it, we could be operating right here, and I always use this analogy. What would you guys do if your phone just rang and you're being advised you're in the early stages of a ransomware attack? This is where something, one day you look one way and the next day you're down completely. There's no bigger threat that's ever happened in the cyber landscape than a malware attack. And so just having any storage back there was great in a time where I just needed to back up the data and store it. But now we're talking about the speed of recovery. Because what happens is that when you get hit with a ransomware attack, and I'm going to use the city of Hamilton as an example. They got hit with an attack last February. They're on about 18, 19 months now. They got hit, and they are now 18 months into it, $13 million just in the cyber recovery aspect of it, and they've only recovered about 75% of their environment. And the reason why is a number of things I'm going to go into. And the first thing they get caught on, what a lot of people get caught on, is when you get hit with a cyber attack, In over 60% of the cases now, authorities are going to come in and say this is a quarantine environment and lock it down. If you have cyber insurance, that's close to 100% because they carry a lot of weight and they like to bring their own incident management teams in. But even if you're not locked down, you have a corrupted environment. You have an environment that has a virus in it. You can't start running production in it. So basically it's quarantined, it's off-site for you. And so if you want into that situation is, what happens to your cyber recovery strategy when your production environment is in quarantine? Because again, my job is I'm the cybersecurity architect for Canada, and I meet with a lot of clients, and the first thing I always say is I'm just going to go to my production area and use my snapshots. But if it's quarantine, that's the first thing that goes away is your snapshot recovery is no longer an option. You can't stand up your snapshots in a production environment that's infected. Whether it's locked down through authorities or you're trying to determine what's happened, it's a crime scene. You've got to understand, how did the hacker get in there? How did he move around? What are the malware binaries that exist in the environment? So you come to really quickly is now backup becomes your single point of dependency for a cyber recovery strategy. If I can't get to my production environment, if I can't get to my snapshots, then I got to be able to get to my backups. I got to be able to restore that data. So how long is it going to take to perform when you have to do multiple recoveries? It's not just you recover at one time. In the next couple of slides, I'm going to walk through the 3 stages of a cyber attack that everybody goes through and the basic requirements you need to do from a recovery environment. And then lastly, if I am able to restore my data, but my production environment is quarantined, where do I restore to? That's the next problem the city of Hamilton went into. So they had to go out right away and they had to purchase 500 terabytes of emergency storage. They had to wait 14 days for that to come on site. During that 14 days, they couldn't do a single thing. And that because they're waiting for storage to come in place. So a lot of times what people do is they'll grab some secondary storage out there, maybe your test dev environment. But basically what it is, it's usually a lower quality environment if you have anything at all. So key aspects are in there is that you're recovering on your backup environment and where you're going to recover to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we cover some of those gaps off. And I'm going to focus on the backup and recovery environment. So in a major attack, and again, in the next slide I have all the sources that I pull all this information from. When you get hit with a major attack, you got to recover anywhere from 30 to 70% of your data. So on average, about half your data needs to be recovered for investigation. If you're in healthcare and finance, it's closer to 100%. Part of the regulations, you got to determine, what data was exfiltrated? But as a standard organization, you're going to take about half your environment, you're going to have to be able to recover it, to be able to examine it, to be able to determine what's been hit, what's not been hit. So it gives an example. If you have a 100 terabyte production environment, you're going to have to take 50% of that, 50 terabytes of that to examine it for contamination. So that's going to have to come from your backups. You're going to have to restore about 50 terabytes of data somewhere to be able to start the investigation and doing it. Now the problem we run into is the speed of recovery. Don't want to call any names out. Leading backup vendors, I think a lot of people know who the leading backup vendor is. They're known to having very, very good data reduction. They're fantastic in that environment where backups were key and keeping your data efficient was in place. But it's a 20-year-old technology that wasn't designed for the need to recover quickly. And so they're just running off a spinning disk, but it's the hydration process. It's taking that deduplicated data and hydrating it makes it very, very slow. So they recover at about 300 gigs an hour, which means in this use case, if I got to recover 50 terabytes to begin my investigation, it's going to be 166 hours just to be able to recover that data. Now you start to understand why City of Hamilton, 18 months later, is still going through this recovery process and validation process. So a lot of people just say, okay, it's just storage, I just have an array of disks in place. Just the physical aspect of how a physical disk works, it's still mechanical. The time it takes to be able to pull data off a platter, put it on the bus, and move it out is about a terabyte an hour. So even doing this to recover 50 terabyte an hour, you're looking at about 50 hours. That's 24 hours a day. So you're basically, during that time, that's idle time. You're not doing any investigation. You're just basically waiting for the data to be restored somewhere so I can start the process. But the problem is that on an average, in the next slide I'm going to talk about the recovery process, you're recovering your data anywhere from 7 to 12 times. So basically take this environment and multiply it by 7 to 12 times during the whole recovery environment. Now you're understanding how much time you're spending being idle, just waiting for the data to restore. So our aspect is this, is that in a cyber recovery scenario, don't move your data. because that's the time frame to do that. So take your backup repository and replace it with pure storage backup repository. It's a high-powered backup repository. We can use it as your backup repository, just like you do anything today. Any data that gets placed in an environment, it goes through 5 different iterations of data reduction. So we deduplicate the data very, very well. 100% encrypted, 100% immutable, 100% indelible. Which means if a hacker gets in there, he cannot do anything to damage your backup environment. Last year, a Gartner report found out that 48% of environments couldn't go to their backups to recover because they're also the victim of a cyber attack. We eliminate that. We go one step further. If you're running Commvault or Veeam, because we perform so quickly, 300,000 IOPS, sub-millisecond latency on this platform, you can run all your databases and infrastructure on top of it, all your indexing, which means not only is your data secure, but your infrastructure is secure too. So we ensure the most important thing to do is that if you're relying on your backup from a recovery standpoint, we ensure that you have complete data integrity in doing it. But our differentiator is don't move your data. Veeam, Commvault, all these products have a fantastic feature called Live Mount, where they can take your backups and stand it directly on top of your backup platform. But almost 100% of the people don't use it because it's not designed for that. The backup originally that's in place was designed to be able to store the data efficiently. It's not so much on the recovery standpoint or performance, and that's key. So to take a look at just the millisecond latency. If you're going to recover your environment, you're running a SQL database, SQL requires 2 to 5 milliseconds of latency. That competitor I talked about, they have 25 milliseconds of latency. A lot of these storage arrays are the same thing, about 15 to 20 milliseconds, which means even if you can stand up some VMs, you can't run your databases. Oracle is sub-millisecond latency. We have sub-millisecond latency, 300,000 IOPS in here. So what we can do is we can take your backup environment, all the backups in there, your most up-to-date, and all your stored backups, we can recover it locally. Allow you to do all your audit and validation right on this platform. Allow you to be able to determine a clean recovery point. And here's the last little bit. Because we're such a high-performing environment, we could be temporary storage. May not want to stand up everything, but we can do a minimal viable recovery. And a minimal viable recovery is, if I get hit with a cyber attack, what are those applications I need to stand up to maintain business continuance? We do that on this platform. And what's interesting here is, again, I can create 10 copies instantly. That could be, it doesn't matter the size, because with our snapshots, I think we can take around 100,000 snapshots on our storage platform with no performance degradation. And we stopped at 100,000, we had to stop at some point. We're designed being very pointer-based and efficient, which means I can take a snapshot of a 10 petabyte environment and instantly recover it without consuming any space or any performance degradation. Which means if I have half a dozen security people there, I can take 5 snapshots of the latest backup, present it out to them. Each one of them has a copy they can start working on. This platform can support it. So I'm going to talk about why that's important. Again, we recover data at 37 terabytes an hour. So for us to recover that same 50 terabytes, it's going to take us an hour and 20 minutes compared to the competitors out there. But we can do the live mount, which means we can recover any storage within about 5 minutes. The other ones aren't available because, again, they just weren't designed for that. They don't have the IOPS, they don't have the latency, they don't have the design for it. Most of it's off a spinning disk. So why that's important? When you get hit with a cyber attack, to get into full normal operations, you're going to go through a process, a 3-phase process. There's multiple little mini phases in here. I'm simplifying it out, but I just want to talk about the key aspects. Is the first phase, you got to reconstruct your environment. Basically what you're doing is you're reconstructing the crime scene. You can't do it in production, it's locked down, and plus you can't work in that environment. Again, it's your production environment. So what this allows you to do is go to the latest backups and be able to stand it up. 2 to 4 backup restores are performed during this environment on average. So again, using that example, if I have a 100 terabyte front end, I want to inspect 50 terabytes of it, but I got to stand it up 2 to 4 times. That means I got to go through recovery of about 100 to 200 terabytes. Just to be able to recreate the environment, to understand how did the hacker get in, how do they move about, what are my malware binaries, and basically recreate the crime scene. This is the time to do that. This is the restore times to do that. And during that time, you're idle. But because we can stand it up directly on top of us, it takes us 5 minutes to be able to stand up those snapshots. We're doing in 10 to 20 minutes what it's taking them hours to do, because what they're doing is they're moving the data. I'm now taking my data, I'm restoring it through the wire, and I'm landing it somewhere. We're saying don't move your data. Just you don't have to move your data, do your upgrades in our platform, where we're basically going to keep the data in place, we're going to upgrade the hardware around it. From a backup standpoint, it's the exact same thing. All we are is we are just the high-powered storage engine working behind your Commvault, your Veeam environment, your Haiku environment, your net backup environment, taking advantage of their live recovery options. And so 10 to 20 minutes, you're doing that. And what's happened is that as soon as that's done, now your security team is going through the process of rebuilding. The other guys are just waiting for the thing to restore. They're not doing a single thing. They can't. They have to wait for it to restore. The second phase is finding the clean recovery point. Now we understand exactly how the hacker got in. In the first stage, we understand any gaps, how he's impacted your Active Directory. We've cleaned up all the malware, so we know exactly what happened. But now it's time to find a clean recovery point. And this is where you got to be able to determine, before I move back into production, what's good and what's bad. 4 to 7 times is the average to do that. Sometimes it's a lot more, but on average, based on the statistics from the sources I've pulled below here, that means now we got to go through 200 terabytes to 350 terabytes of recovery to be able to find a clean recovery point. Stand up a clean recovery point, inspect it. Is it clean? No. Let's go to the next one. How are you going to do that to be able to determine it? There's your time frames. With us, 5 minutes at each one, so we're going to be looking anywhere from 20 to 35 minutes to do that. But what's key about this thing also is that in the incidents below, they're just doing one single recovery. Checking, is it good? Not good, tear it down, do it again. I can create 10 different copies and present it to 10 different people. And that, because again, we can create the snapshots instantly. It doesn't consume space. So not only are we coming up quickly, but we're doing multiple copies. You want 10 copies, one for each of your security people, each one doing a different thing? Great, don't like it, tear it down, build another one up. It's going to take about 5 minutes. That's huge. Lastly, we've determined, okay, we found clean recovery points. We want to be able to take that 50 terabytes, recover it back into the environment. My production is no longer in quarantine. Single backup, 50 terabytes. This is where we actually are physically moving data, where we have to be able to restore it, but we're restoring it at 37 terabytes per hour. So it's going to take us about just a little over an hour to move 50 terabytes of data back into your production environment versus the competitors. Now you start putting that time together. You're going to spend 2 hours and 15 minutes with us on average in what we call idle time, which is the time needed to restore the data so that my team can fix up what's happening. Compared to that 1,900 hours divided by 24, you're going to find out how many days it is. And now you start to understand why City of Hamilton is basically on day about 500 and has only recovered 75% of their environment. Why the Nova Scotia Power is going through the same problem. We see this repeatedly throughout the environment, and it's this recovery process. That is the slowness. That's why, from a backup standpoint, any storage doesn't matter anymore. So we can make sure the storage is secure. We can make sure it's done, and we do that with this environment. This is nothing more than a high-powered storage engine you plug in behind your Veeam and Commvault. Very easy to do. Less than an hour to set it up. 5 minutes, we point it to your Veeam environment, your Commvault environment, and now we're backing up. This is not complex, and allows us to be able to do a full backup and restore just like your normal products do, but now we have the ability to do our isolated recovery zone. Got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left, and I'm going to talk about more value we add to this, is that a lot of time your backup product just sits there, doesn't do anything. While this product is sitting there, because we can do the backup and we can use the tools to stand up stuff directly on top of us, not in production, use it to do a lot of your compliance and auditing. Don't pull value from it. We're going to pull value from Veeam and Commvault by using all the features of live mount. You're getting value there. We're going to greatly reduce your business continuance time. Great value there. But while it's sitting there, use it. Security and training. Go through the whole security and training process. If I pull it up, I want to be able to walk through and understand exactly how my applications are going to start, any type of roadblocks I'm going to hit. I want to walk through this thing multiple times until I know that if that phone were to ring right now and say, you're in the early stages of a ransomware attack, boom, I know exactly what to do, because we've done it. The system's not sitting there idle. This is probably one of the most important ones, is be proactive. You have a ton of security tools out there that you're not using. As soon as you do a backup, stand it up. Again, automatic with stand up. It's available to you, completely isolated. Turn your tools on it. 53% improvement in malware detection. Nova Scotia Power, as I mentioned, 5 weeks before they recognized the cyber hackers involved in this environment. If they had something like this, they would have picked it right away. And just so you know, Nova Scotia Power has moved all their stuff to Pure after this attack. Because again, this aspect is that they recognize the vulnerability, what they have in place. But again, be proactive. Go out there and do your threat detection. Don't wait for it to happen. Do it beforehand. Flag it as early as possible, which is the one aspect. Know your gaps, flag it as early as possible, recover quickly. And this one's huge. We can be the production environment. $16,000 is the average time for a medium-sized organization in Canada. Lost wages, lost income, operational costs, cyber-resilience coverage. This has nothing to do with legal. So every day you're down, it's basically costing you about $300,000. Imagine the amount of time we're saving, because now we can be your temporary recovery environment. Your production is locked up, do your auditing there, find a clean recovery point, stand it up on top of us. Use us as the production environment. When you're ready to move, we can move your data back into your environment. So the key aspects: prepare, know your gaps, know your vulnerabilities, stay vigilant, try and capture the data as soon as it changes, and the most important one is optimize every single minute. Understand this is the most costly part of a cyber attack, is the restore process and being able to investigate. We eliminate that with our product, and that's directly on time. My time literally just ran out. So I thank everybody for your time today. We're in a booth there if you want to find out more information what we have in place. We have a lot of great technologies, a lot of integration. If you guys want to gain some further information, we welcome you to come over and talk a bit more at our booth. And I think it's lunchtime now, so thank you very much for your time. Much appreciated.